Now,
on News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
O'Connor and Company.
Plowing through this Thursday morning like nobody's business. It's 7:06 now. We're leading up to the arraignment of Donald Trump here in Washington, D.C. at 4 p.m. Keep it here on WMAL, not just for all the news related to that and the rally outside and all that jazz, but also the traffic issues that you'll deal with. Vince Colonnese has you covered during your afternoon drive. Julie Gunlock and I, Larry O'Connor, have you covered here on the morning drive. And Julie, look who's coming up at 7:35. Dr. Marty Makary of Johns Hopkins about this beating drum of COVID-19 hysteria we're seeing from the media. 8:05, Peter Schweitzer. 8:35, Molly Hemingway. And, you know, Schweitzer and Hemingway are two of the journalists who have had clear eyes in reporting on all of the facts connected to the Hunter Biden and Joe Biden family scandals, as well as the indictments of Donald Trump. They sort of cut through it all, right?
That's right.
And so that's why we can't wait to talk to them, but also our guest right now, because you can add his list to those who have been covering these stories and giving context and information and fact. You know about what's going to happen in the Biden scandals a little bit before it actually happens because oftentimes of John Solomon's reporting at Just the News. John, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, great to be with you.
Well, I'm sure you saw the Devin Archer interview with Tucker Carlson yesterday. I know that you've been following Devin Archer and everything. I don't know if there was anything new revealed, but there was definitely sort of a freer flow of conversation and context, I think, with regard to the brand, Hunter Biden being the guy who knows the guy. I mean, we're dancing around this, but it's pretty obvious. This is access and influence peddling 101.
Yeah, absolutely. And in a few hours, just a few short hours, I expect the House Oversight Committee to release the full transcript. And I think we're going to get a little bit more than what was teased on Monday. I think you're going to get some revelations that Devin Archer thought that his colleague, Hunter Biden, really functioned as a lobbyist that went after foreign clients using his very powerful name. And I think that's a very important thing. If Devin Archer uses the name lobbyist, which I've heard from sources is true, then it means that he had an obligation to register under the Foreign Agent Registration Act when he was representing foreign interests, which he didn't. And, of course, that's been one of the big questions Republicans have. But I think we should all be looking in this transcript to see if he calls Hunter Biden a lobbyist. That won't be an accident if Devin Archer does that, because then it means in Devin Archer's mind, this guy was a foreign agent, and should have registered under the Foreign Agent Registration Act. So I think that's one of the big revelations.
Okay.
The brand means the name, right?
Yeah.
He was using his last name to make money. And then I think the last question is, what was he doing for Burisma? That's the one that the FBI told us was a bribery situation, or the FBI document claims was a bribery, quid pro quo. Let's see what Devin Archer says about that. What was his thing? And that congressman who came out Monday said he was buying them legal protection. Let's see if Devin Archer actually says that in the interview. But I believe this transcript will be very, very important. It'll be not only establishing the fact pattern of, hey, he met with his son's clients, he came in on the phone to him. In Devin Archer's mind, what was his colleague, Hunter Biden, doing? That's what we should be looking for. I think we're going to get some news out of this in a little bit.
John Solomon's our guest, justthenews.com. Can I follow up on the FARA thing, the Foreign Agent Registration Act? Because James Comer yesterday, the chairman of the Oversight Committee, said, and I've been hearing Mark Levin say this for weeks, that if Hunter Biden is guilty or should be charged with FARA violations, then so should Joe Biden. Based on the facts at hand, how does Comer reach that conclusion?
We'll have to see. I haven't seen the transcripts. I'm not sure I can say that, right? I don't know. We know that Joe Biden...
Well, let me ask the question a different way. Yeah. If they can show that Joe Biden benefited financially from Hunter Biden's foreign agent activities, and if they can show that he had more involvement than previously known, including that telephone that was purchased by Hunter Biden's business, well, doesn't that show that he's part of this business, part of the foreign agent relations that Hunter should have registered as?
Yeah, I think it goes to this idea of a brand, that Joe Biden and Hunter Biden, in the minds of the clients and in the way that Joe Biden worked with his son, that he was part of a brand.
Yeah.
And Hunter Biden got his business because of the brand. Who was the brand? Joe Biden. The family name was the brand. So you're going to see these in the transcript. We know from what we've been told by the lawmakers that Joe Biden made 20 times he got on the phone with his son's clients. Think about that. He's the sitting vice president. His son is sitting overseas in meeting with foreign clients or wooing foreign clients, trying to get them to pay him. And every so often, Joe Biden just happens to dial in and have a conversation, even if it's small talk, right? I think that may be some of the concepts that we have or that is driving James Comer's thing. It's a provocative thing to say. I haven't found any evidence that has gone yet that any money's gone to Joe Biden or that Joe Biden had any substantive conversations with him. Did he have small talk yet? Was he part of the wooing process? Perhaps. Listen, I think the single most important thing is going to turn out to be what did Joe Biden do to help to be bereavement? Was there something Joe Biden did? We know from the description of lawmakers that it's believed that Joe Biden fired the prosecutor in Ukraine or helped pressure the firing of the prosecutor in Ukraine to make his son's companies happy, right? That is a big thing. Was that U.S. policy in line with it? That's what we were told during impeachment in 2019, during the Ukraine impeachment. But what if it wasn't? What if the U.S. policy was going in a different direction and then Joe Biden took an action separately? If that becomes the case, yeah, maybe Joe Biden is part of a lobbying shop and he should have registered for FARA. We'll see.
John, we have seen Democrats desperately trying to defend this president, Dan Goldman embarrassing himself, talking about, oh, sure, he called, but only to talk about the weather. But now we also have a letter that the vice president at the time, Biden, who was vice president at the time, sent to Devon Archer after a 2011 China lunch. So here's a piece of paper showing that he actually did talk to the business partners about business. How much longer are Democrats going to be able to keep up this sort of silly ploy that, it was just, it was just innocent?
All you need to do is watch the January 6th committee and some of the claims they made there, or Russia collusion. Hey, they were able to keep Russia collusion going for 3 straight years, right?
Yeah.
Before they finally folded their cards. You're going to see some extraordinary behavior by our that aforementioned Congressman Dan Goldman in the paper. He's going to engage, I think, in this transcript with more laptop denialism. I'll use a Democrat term, denialism. Yeah, he's going to try to get Devon Archer to say the laptop. Listen, the FBI confirmed the laptop. The FBI used it as evidence. The FBI exploited it. The journalists have confirmed it. But listen, there's nowhere that Dan Goldman's not going to go. He's the new Adam Schiff because Adam Schiff has to go run for California Senate. And so we're going to have a lot of fun watching Dan Goldman. He doesn't seem to have many scruples. He's going to have a lot of fun playing the defense counsel, and we're going to see some pretty funny moments in this transcript. I expect to see some laptop denialism. So I think we can laugh about that a little bit.
Hey, John, do you have a few more minutes? I know that you're a very busy guy on days like this. Oh, good. Okay. And you got lots of media hits. Great. John, I got a couple more questions, especially about John's reporting on these charges against Donald Trump that he'll be arraigned for today, and maybe some evidence that Special Counsel Jack Smith either hasn't seen or is completely ignored that will be very relevant. We'll get to that in a moment. And John has an event at a local library that I want to tell you about in just a moment. So keep it here with John Solomon at 7:15.
WMAL.
Making sense of the news.
Live
from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios.
Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
The new WMAL app has arrived. Download it today and listen anywhere in the world.
John Solomon is not just an award-winning investigative journalist and the founder of JustTheNews.com. He's also a children's book author. We've talked about the book Hidden Headlines, a Seymour Clues mystery, all about investigative journalism. And that book will be part of a library event that John will be appearing at. He'll read his book at the Dolly Madison Library coming up on August 5th. That's this weekend, Saturday. Yeah. Wow, that's fun. You're doing your little children's book reading. You're not going to be dressed like a drag queen, are you, John?
I'm not. I'm not even going to be dressed like a hamster, which is the main character in the book. No, I'm going to go just as myself, sadly. That might disappoint some people. But, listen, I'm so impassioned to talk about censorship. It's one of the greatest threats to the American experience right now, and it's in full throes. There's a story today on the front page of Just News. Everybody should read it. Brand new Facebook documents that I was able to get my hands on They recount their meetings with the Biden White House just in 2021, so just 2 years ago. And the Biden White House at one point suggests to Facebook, it wants to know if Facebook could change its algorithm so that Americans would only read stories about COVID-19 vaccines from the New York Times and Wall Street Journal and no longer read them from sources like Ben Shapiro's The Daily Wire or from Fox News contributor Tommy Lahren. Just think about that for a second. Somebody said it out loud. Hey, just turn off the conservatives, turn up the liberals. What an extraordinary moment. So this book I wrote using a hamster as a newspaper publisher, an allegory to really teach the next generation of children that what's been going on in the last few years is wrong, that free speech was free for a reason. And I'm really looking forward to seeing the great people in McLean, one of my favorite cities, always go visit.
That's cool. All right, so that's Saturday morning, the 5th, Dolly Madison Library. Get all that information there.
Yes,
John, a lot of people have been saying about these charges against President Trump that you sort of have to prove, well, at least on one of these charges, that you have to prove that Donald Trump truly in his heart knew that he had lost the election. And how you prove what somebody knows in their heart, I don't know. But I guess they're going to show a lot of different advice he was getting from people in his cabinet or his close-knit circle of advisors, although Donald Trump ignoring his advisors is hardly, a new development.
Yes, that was a daily occurrence.
But based on some of your reporting I've already seen, and you're sort of hinting at something else that's about to drop, Bernard Carrick, the former commissioner of police in New York, he was part of that circle. And what have you learned about him?
This is very important stuff. So just 2 weeks ago, Bernie Carrick surrendered documents that previously his lawyers considered to be attorney-client privileged. They show that there was this sprawling police-like investigation run by Bernie Carrick, being the former NYPD commissioner. It's not surprising that it would be a police-like investigation, but it had scores of leads, scores of affidavits, scores of analyses from data analysts, all this sort of evidence pointing to alleged irregularities. I'm sure most of them ultimately would not or did not turn out to be true, but they were still in a state of being investigated. They had made no conclusions that anything was bogus or false or unreliable. In fact, they were escalating their efforts to get Congress, state legislatures, and election regulators to look at it. That is what we would typically call evidence of consciousness, evidence of state of mind. Mm-hmm. It means that the people right under President Trump, the ones directly advising him on this election stuff, Rudy Giuliani, the mayor, who was the lead lawyer, and former NYPD Commissioner Bernie Carrick, the chief investigator, that they went into January 6th still believing that a lot of these allegations were true or still needed to be investigated. That's going to be a huge burden to Jack Smith. And last night we found out something shocking. Jack Smith hasn't yet interviewed Bernie Carrick about these documents. That's happening next week. So Jack Smith brought an indictment before he resolved this issue with one of his key witnesses. I think that's going to be a big thing. And then this morning, remember, we heard all day yesterday, if you watch CNN, you saw Mike Pence marathon yesterday.
Yeah.
Mike Pence was dumping on the president. Mike Pence said that he knew that these things weren't true. Well, this morning we put a little Twitter video, a little walk-through history, January 4th, 2016, less than 24 hours before the January 6th certification of votes. Mike Pence was giving a speech saying, I'm with you people. I think there's a lot of problems with these elections, and your voice is going to be heard on January 6th. Wait a second. Is that the same Mike Pence that's quoted in Jack Smith's indictment saying, I knew this was all bogus? Wait, Mike Pence was saying something different at the time that was more supportive of what Donald Trump is. Jack Smith has a lot of problems that the lawyers are going to pound down on.
And even more so, it's fair to say that none of that evidence was presented to this grand jury. I mean, not that a grand jury in D.C. would come up with a different result, but it just seems like, again, they say they can indict a ham sandwich, but that's not a good thing. Ham sandwiches are innocent. They don't deserve to be indicted. Thanks, John Solomon. Great stuff as always.
Great to be with you. Bye-bye.
It is justthenews.com, and it's 7:28 here on O'Connor and Company. Next Door, the app that allows neighbors to talk about what's going on in their neighborhood and, raise the red flags about issues, crime, things like that. They have banned, the Tennessee chapter of Nextdoor or area has banned Moms for Liberty from actually participating because, and they cited the Southern Poverty Law Center's, hate group list there.
Yeah. This is, it's shameful. And the piling on against Moms for Liberty. We even saw this when one of their chapter members had mentioned that Hitler tried to, or did, appeal to the youth in Germany, and this Moms for Liberty chapter member put that quote into a newsletter saying that as a cautionary tale, saying that, and this is what the left is doing, particularly with the trans issue and many other issues. They're trying to appeal to the youth of America. And that got twisted as, oh, this woman is quoting to Hitler. She Moms for Liberty likes Hitler. It's insane. Absolute insanity. And we saw people repeat this. It was destructive, and here we go with next door piling on.
Southern Poverty Law Center is evil.
Now
On News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
O'Connor and Company.
It is 7:36 here on Thursday morning in your nation's capital, the third day of August. Happy birthday, Ensign Veronica O'Connor. It's my daughter's birthday. How about that? One of my daughter's birthdays. Coming up later in the program at 8:05, we'll talk to Peter Schweitzer about the latest in the Biden story. And then at 8:35, Molly Hemingway, I'm Larry O'Connor with Julie Gunlock.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Many people don't even have any symptoms. A mask can be your best friend. Keep it private. Back in time, we had them in our pockets, in our coats, in our backpacks. Time to bring them out again, especially as the school season starts. We don't want to see kids missing school for things that we could have prevented.
I would love to tell you that was a flashback piece of audio from a news report in fall of 2020, but it's not. That was 2 days ago. On MSNBC, Dr. Marty Makary joins us now of Johns Hopkins University. And Dr. Makary, I'm told by ABC and MSNBC and various news outlets that there is a disturbing increase in COVID-19 hospitalizations. And you just heard from that, doctor. It's time to bring the masks out again. Help, please. Please help me out.
It's like deja vu right now, and you can't believe what you're hearing, if these are recordings from the past or not. But yeah, people they're reaching in their holster for the one tool that they know, and that is masks. So after COVID, we've had tremendous learning loss, depression, anxiety, increase in suicide. You look at kids, they didn't like having their faces covered for 2+ years. And this is the one thing people want to go back to. So if people tell you you need to mask or have your kids wear a mask, tell them about the Cochrane Review. That is the highest authority scientific evidence group in medicine. It's always been like that for decades. They say masks don't work. And if they point to the New England Journal Boston study of the Boston school system, the reanalysis of that study found the reverse results. And remember, the New England Journal essentially endorsed Joe Biden for president, the first time in his 200-year history that it did that.
Yeah. Dr. Baker, one follow-up, though, because they're basing all of this new alarmist reaction on the idea that there's a 12% increase week over week of COVID-19 hospitalizations. Now, number one, because I did some digging, those are not people being hospitalized because they have COVID. Right. It's people going to the hospital for other reasons, and they test positive for COVID upon entry, number one. But number two, that 12% increase week over week, it is still the 8th lowest week we've had in the last 3 years of COVID-19 test results.
96% of Americans have antibodies from natural immunity or vaccine or both. And the 4% who don't probably have a low level of T and B cell response or just had an asymptomatic whiff of the case. So the virus may not be much different, but our immune systems are very different. So I don't see this outcry when we have a 15% increase in influenza or Coxsackie virus or anything else. And I don't remember this outrage ever in the past when we had these common cold viruses circulate. So this is a very politicized virus out of all the viruses that circulate.
Doctor, do you think that we'll see some school districts, Northern Virginia, for instance, Maryland, some of these sort of deep blue areas, try to bring back masks or even, my goodness, online school? Do you think that's in the future, or do you think this will sort of pass because people just don't have the patience for it now?
I think it is in the future because there's a revisionist history of COVID. People actually believe that we were able to stop it because of masks, and that if everyone would have worn a mask, then that would have stopped it. And it was the unmasked that resulted in all these problems. The unvaccinated and the unmasked, that's why we have all these problems in society today. People actually believe that.
Yeah.
So I am concerned.
Yeah, that's the other part of it. It's like there's no reason for this alarmism to put people in masks. But then, oh, by the way, number two, haven't we learned that the masks actually weren't necessary in the first place? They didn't actually do anything, especially when it came to children. Could I ask you, Doctor, about this very disturbing report that there was an illegally operating lab, medical lab, owned and operated by Chinese nationals who are here as guests in our country, over in Fresno, California, and they found 1,000 mice infected with HIV, E. coli, malaria, and COVID-19. What could possibly be at play here?
I don't know, but one thing that is known in the virology science community is that when you're tinkering with the viruses and animals and they're jumping around, do it in another country. People generally feel like keep this off our soil. So it's very suspicious and peculiar,
to say the least. And to that end, the investigations of similar viruses in animals that happen in that Wuhan lab, do you think that Anthony Fauci is actually going to have to answer to what that experimentation was? Because he first denied that we had anything to do with it, denied that anything was going on. We've seen the emails that say otherwise. Turns out we were funding it. Is this just going to go away, or what is the best way to sort of get to the bottom of this and find out what our involvement was?
Well, remember, China filed for a COVID vaccine patent in February 2020. That's like before we even, shut down our country. Mm-hmm. How are they working on a vaccine in order to have a patent filed in February? That's raised a lot of questions. And the guy who filed for the patent, who was a Wuhan lab collaborator, he mysteriously died 2.5 months later. The one Chinese media source said he fell off the roof of the Wuhan lab. So look, these are very dishonest people. And I'm not referring just to the Chinese authorities. I'm referring to our public health officials as well. Yeah. Take a look at the emails from the U.S. Surgeon General to Facebook to take down true stories of vaccine complications. Take a look at Dr. Fauci commissioning his virology buddies to write a puff piece in a scientific journal saying definitively it did not come from the lab, when many of them had just told him they thought it came from the lab. So I don't think we're going to see accountability. I'd love to see it. They've been lying to us, spreading misinformation for 3 years now. Yeah. I'd love to see some accountability.
We need a reckoning. Thank you, Dr. Makary. Always good to talk with you.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
Yep, it's 7:44. If you're struggling to sell your home in this market, I want to tell you about my good friends in person. Let's check in over on MSNBC, where they've been covering the indictment of Donald Trump with a very different set of eyes and kind of different context.
That's one way to put it.
And here, now we're stuck having to draw on the wisdom of people like John Solomon and Peter Schweitzer and Molly Hemingway, where over at MSNBC, they have the benefit of bouncing all these issues off of the Reverend Al Sharpton. So here.
I thought about this as I was looking through the indictment last night.
Yeah.
And I grew up and started my activism in a section of Brooklyn called Brownsville.
Oh, we're
and
familiar.
walking to the subway many mornings, some of the guys in the neighborhood would say, Rev, I caught a case. I have never walked down that block and somebody said I caught 3 cases. I mean, this is just as low as it gets. I've never heard of 3 cases on one individual in 3 jurisdictions. So this is serious. But on the other side of it, one day our children's children will read American history.
Yeah.
And can you imagine our reading that James Madison or Thomas Jefferson tried to overthrow the government so they could stay in power? That's what we're looking at. We're looking at American history.
Who wants to tell him? Who wants to break it to him that Thomas Jefferson and James Madison literally overthrew a government. That's also
it hurts.
By the way, I thought that slave owner Thomas Jefferson and slave owner James Madison are supposed to be erased from history. That they're demons. We should tear down their statues and take them off our currency.
What's he doing even mentioning them?
Sharpton citing them as some sort of heroic figures.
Yeah, it's triggering to those poor watchers of that insane channel. Hey,
set aside the fact that the entire framing of these indictments and the idea that he's been indicted by 3 jurisdictions, so he's got to be guilty. Is a great way to look at the way our justice system works.
It's not a witch hunt.
No, not in any way whatsoever. But then to top it off.
And can you imagine our reading that James Madison or Thomas Jefferson tried to overthrow the government so they could stay in power?
Well, you know what? Here's the thing, though. Most people watching MSNBC are probably not along saying, that's right, that would be outrageous. Thomas Jefferson and James Madison would never do that. In fact, here's this comes from who did this? Well, I don't know. I'll tell you who did it in a minute. But here's one of those man on the street things where a reporter talks to teenagers.
What did the Declaration of Independence do?
Save slaves from being enslaved.
There you go.
No. It got us away from the UK.
I declared the freedom of the USA. From who? George Washington? Am I wrong? From the British, girl. Isn't he from George Washington, England?
They freed us, right?
From what?
Slavery.
Declare us independence.
Yeah, an independent or free will country.
Of who?
Oh, wait, no. It was for the slaves, right?
See, it's not like the people in our school systems actually even know what Thomas Jefferson or James Madison did. Yeah.
What I love is that one of the people they interview is in a cap and gown.
Right.
They had just graduated from college and they have no clue.
That's right. So I guess it all just fits together, doesn't it? Isn't this why David Brooks begins his articles in the New York Times with
we educated
we in the educated class?
Yes, if you have not seen David Brooks' latest article, I do encourage you to read it. It is it's nice to know that these elites are finally catching up to what Larry has been saying, and many of us have been saying for a decade. They're finally catching up.
Well, but they don't
really
catch up. They come really. David Brooks comes really
so
close, but he can't. Yeah. Honestly, anytime you open up or start to read an article, and the author has actually brought himself to the point where, with a straight face, he can begin it with, "We in the educated class." Just stop reading.
I mean,
just take the newspaper and set it on fire.
Actually, we should open every show that way. Can you imagine?
Yeah, we in the educated class.
Well, good morning. We in the I can't even say it.
It's 7:53.